Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Are you okay?
Yeah, I can just about hear you. You're not terribly loud, but okay.
Okay. I'll make sure I
Shout.
shout. Yeah. Welcome to the Need2Know Music Show with me, Ronan McManus. I'm here on Switchbox TV, and today I'm joined by the frontman of legendary punk band Stiff Little Fingers from Northern Ireland. Please welcome Jake Burns. How are you, Jake? How you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, how's this last few months been?
Same as everybody, you know. You alternate between climbing the walls. You alternate between thanking whatever power you believe in. I actually did test positive for the coronavirus thing. So I had, I think, one night where I felt wretched, and then apart from that, I felt okay. So, you know, touch wood. That's probably the worst I'm going to be with it. So, like I said, you thank whatever higher power you believe in that you got through that. But yeah, you know, trying to keep yourself busy. You know, writing songs that you send to the band, who then send them back to you and go, "Nah, come on, catch yourself on." So, you know, yeah, basically just, you know, like I said, try not to climb the walls, really.
So you're in Chicago these days, is that right?
Yeah. I've been here for getting on 16 years now.
Wow. You can't hear it in your accent. You're still.
Sorry?
I can't hear it in your accent.
No, I know. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think, you know, that's a musician's ear thing. When I lived in London, I lived there for about 11 years. And it was only when I was speaking to people that lived there. I mean, I might pick it up talking to you, but I started talking all that, you know, without even realising it, you know. And then I went and lived in Newcastle, which just meant nobody could understand a damn word I was saying.
Learning fully a new language. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, for some reason, the American accent hasn't impinged on me, you know. It's like, and I think there's also this weird, that it happens to people from Northern Ireland when they come here. You can hear it in Van Morrison. Van Morrison's the world's worst for this. And it's this weird disc jockey, mid-Atlantic, awful accent, you know. I think there might be some little censor in my mind going, don't end up sounding like Van Morrison, whatever you do. I mean, it'd be great if I could sing like him, but don't talk like him.
Don't talk like him,
yeah.
So, what were your plans going into this year? Did you have any sort of your live plans and that kind of thing? What did COVID interrupt for you? What was your thing?
We'd just done the first 3 shows of a British tour, and I mean, I think actually, to be honest, the touring probably is what saved my neck. Sorry, I've just noticed a cat wandering right across. She's about to knock everything off that counter over there. Yeah, I think that actually touring is what saved my neck. We started in the Far East. We started in Japan in February, and we were supposed to go to Hong Kong. And the COVID thing, or it was then the coronavirus, was just starting to make rumbling noises over here. I mean, obviously the Wuhan outbreak had happened, and my wife got really antsy, and she's like, "Look, before you go to Japan, and particularly if you're going to Hong Kong, go get a flu shot or something." So I went to see a local doctor, and I got a flu shot, a pneumonia shot, and a shingle shot, and I think that is actually why I got away with it so lightly. Because, you know, we didn't actually do the Hong Kong show because the rumblings were getting louder, and we just skipped that. But then we went to Singapore, which turns out to be just as much of a hotbed anyway. So, you know, that's probably where we picked it up. But yeah, we were like 3 shows into a UK tour. We'd managed the first 3 gigs, and yeah, then it was, you know, you were getting like, you know, when they're trying to elect a new pope, and you get sort of, you know, the smoke signals from we were getting sort of, to quote Lee Perry, we were getting baffling smoke signals from Downing Street. Nobody seemed to know whether you were allowed to carry on or not carry on, or what you were supposed to do. And, you know, shows were starting to fall by the wayside. Scotland decided earlier than England did that they weren't going to allow shows to go ahead. So rather sadly, we broke our run of Barrowland shows in Glasgow. We'd managed, this would have been our 29th St. Patrick's Day in a row in Barrowland. But so we were going for 30, but unfortunately we're still, I don't know if it counts because we get to, because it was cancelled by, pandemic or whatever, and we can pick it up at 29 now if we have to go back and start at 1 again next year. I don't think I'll make 30 if that's the case. And so, yeah, that was it. We pulled that tour. Everybody went home. And since then, it's just been a case of, cancelling festivals, cancelling other bits and pieces, and postponing them. So originally, we were trying to start again August, September, but we've just put everything back to 2021,
Yeah, I think there's going to be all like this year's shows or next year's shows, and like it seems like 2021 is going to be like you have to do sort of Tuesday afternoon gigs to fit them all in. I feel like it's going to be the
that's the other thing. I mean, the music business seems to have unilaterally decided that it's all going to be fine in 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's actually come up with a cure or even a treatment for this thing yet. So until they do, and I think there's going to be a lot of, even if there is a treatment, I mean, you're going to come up against the whole anti-vaxxer nonsense that goes on at the moment, just when it comes to things like measles, are these people still going to kick back against that and not want to take this particular vaccine? That's kind of how we got rid of polio, was when you were like at school, they just came in and went, that's you done, polio disappears, and then you get the anti-vaccine people come along and suddenly we got polio back again. So you worry if not everybody's going to take the vaccine, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of people still being nervous about going, particularly to a club atmosphere. I mean, we're not playing arenas; we're playing at best, like I said, somewhere like Barrowland or the Roundhouse, where it's just like 2,000-3,000 people. And here in America, we played at anywhere between 500 and 1,000, depending on the size of the venue. Those are tight, cramped, sweaty spaces, and if this thing is transmitted by droplets of water in the air, who's going to feel, even with that who's going to feel confident about going out?
Well, there's sort of about these sort of like
picture, don't I?
Yeah, I'm really glad I'm talking to you.
Yeah, really.
But it's yeah, if they talk about socially distanced audiences, I mean, that's just an absolute non-starter, isn't it? Can you imagine a Stiff Little Fingers gig, all social distanced, everyone standing 2 meters apart and not moving?
Right. I mean, it's just not going to happen, and I mean, I kind of applaud people that have tried to do things like the drive-in shows and whatever. But I got a friend here who plays in a band, and they did a couple of drive-in shows, but they had to. And that's the other thing. You can't actually play major cities then, because they don't have drive-ins as such. I mean, well, first of all, Britain doesn't have them at all. I think it's really only America that has them. And
they talked about Milton Keynes Bowl being a drive-in, doing a drive-in in Milton Keynes Bowl, which is possible, I suppose. But there's a big slope in the middle, around on the edges of it, so it is a bowl. So you sort of feel like the mosh pit could get very messy, couldn't it?
Right, exactly. Expensive. The mosh pit is everything expensive. But yeah, I mean, it's there are all these sort of little initiatives, and none of them really. I mean, the thing's set up to be what it is, and I just don't think that. I don't see it. I don't see it getting back to normal very quickly. I hope it does. I mean, I hope that somebody comes out with a cure that doesn't involve demon sperm. That would be good. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw something about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was, crazy.
And of course, President Cuckoo Bananas here has just jumped on it. Yeah, that's the answer. I said, no. Sure. Anyway,
well, I saw you on Facebook. You were sort of very publicly trying to get to grips with the Port Studio. So how have you found you attempting to record some stuff and that? Have you been doing some demos? And it seems like you've been busy trying to get some new ideas down.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I have. I mean, just yesterday I managed to come to terms with the equipment. I've owned this recording equipment for years. And it's like it sits in the corner like this sort of malevolent demon, and I eventually tried. Yeah, I'm going to have to remember how all that works again, aren't I? Yes, I have. I mean, I've been trying to write. I mean, it's interesting, writing the type of material and playing the type of material that we do, which has always been political with a small p. Well, sometimes with a big P, but mainly with a small p. The current, as things stand at the moment, a lot of my friends have forever saying to me, wow, you can't be short of material to write, at the moment. And to be honest with you, it's a bit like, I mean, that is true up to a point, but it's a bit like sort of being confronted with the world's biggest all-you-can-eat buffet. It's like you don't really know where to start.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a case of sort of coming to terms with, okay, what's bugging me at the minute? What isn't? So I start, 1, 2, 3, 4, and try and put those into little boxes almost to okay, that's that song, that's that song, that's that song. So yeah, I have been doing that. I mean, it's basically, like I said earlier, right at the start of our chat, was to trying to stop myself climbing the walls. I've been invited to do a couple of little bits and pieces outside the band. So, I'm looking at those. In fact, once I finish talking with you, I'm going to go do or start working on a little thing. Morgan Fisher from Mott the Hoople, the keyboard player, some years back, he put an album out called Miniatures, which was clever wordplay on the title, because every track was a minute long. And he had people like Gavin Bryars and stuff who do these little pieces of 1 minute long. And I've been asked if I'd like to do one. And it's an interesting problem to have, to try and do something and stop it at a minute,
Yeah.
Again, in sort of downtime years back, I did some sort of library music with Bruce Foxton and Steve Grantley, our drummer. And that was fun, because it was like, okay, this has got to be a minute long. This has got to be 30 seconds long. It's got to be, and you sort of find yourself, because again, you get into the studio and it's like, oh, this is working well, and suddenly somebody's hammering on the window going, oh, you're done, stop. Really? Oh, okay. So, just little things. And I like doing things outside the band as well when we got downtime, just because, I mean, you'll find this as well as a songwriter, there's a lot of basically crap inside you that has to come out at some point to get to the good stuff. But sometimes that crap is loads of fun to play, and it may not necessarily actually be crap. It just doesn't suit the particular vehicle you're trying to be writing for. So
Absolutely.
It's kind of fun to go off and do a country and western song with somebody, or to play heavy metal for 20 minutes or something. There's no way on God's green earth you'd get away with it with stiff little fingers, but it gets it out there and it's fun to do.
Yeah, I co-wrote a song with my kids called "My Dad Can't TikTok" about the TikTok dances and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And it's like nothing I can use unless it's sort of done under the sort of pseudonym of the kids, and it's kind of like it's probably going to be the thing that makes me the £1 million. It'll be the song about TikTok.
There you
go. I can't actually, in all honesty, put my name to. So.
Exactly, you can't own up to it. Suddenly, you hear, that's me. No, it's not. Yeah, really. Actually, funnily enough, since I was talking about doing that library music. And I'll show you how long ago it was. I was living in Newcastle. I went to the cinema, and there was an ad, of the Pearl and Deans came up.
Yeah.
And there was an ad, I think, for Yorkshire Bank, and John Peel voiced it. And it was this sort of Gary Glitter, sorry, but it was this sort of Gary Glitter sound-alike in the background. And it was like 2/3 of the way through, and I went, oh, that's me.
Yeah, my dad did the White's Lemonade advert, so that was the
actually, bizarrely, I talked to your dad about it once. I met him once, and yes, that was the only thing I could think of to talk to him right now.
Well, this is that was it when he sort of died. It was kind of like the first line of the obituary was, "Our White's Lemonade guy, dies." Like, well, he wouldn't be very happy with that as his main headline of his obituary,
right.
Because but it was a thing that brought us money through the years, so it was good. We normally talk to people who are kind of emerging artists and talking about how they're trying to sort of break through and that kind of thing. I was interested to talk to you about the really early days of when you really first got into music and what that was kind of like at that time, and because it was, I mean, it's at the end of the 70s was kind of when you started the band. Is that right? I mean, what age were you when you started getting? Yeah. What age were you when you started getting into music before that? And was there a musical household you grew up in?
Not really. I mean, not the same way that yours was. Nobody actually played, but there was always music in the house. My dad was a big Hank Williams fan. Both my parents were big country music fans, so I kind of grew up listening to Hank Williams, Patsy Cline, and folk like that. So there was always music being played, and I mean, it wasn't actively discouraged until it looked like I might want to take it seriously. Then it was kind of discouraged. So yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I had a guitar for about, I think, about a year before I learned how to tune it up. You know, like a lot of sort of, you know, teenage boys. It was like, oh, that's a cool sort of thing to have, you know. And it looked better than a tennis racket in front of the mirror, you know. I still can play the rotten thing, but you know. So yeah, I mean, it was something I kind of gravitated towards myself, really, in terms of playing. But there was always music played in the house, you know. But with regards to actually getting started, I don't. I mean, again, like a lot of people, you know, I had no idea where you'd start. You know, with but I'm fast forwarding to a point where, you know, I'd met some friends and we'd formed a band, and you know, we kind of learned to play together. You know, we bought bought like the play in a day books and all that sort of stuff, but there were no set lessons, which probably would have been not a bad thing. They've had a few, at least, you know, a few pointers from somebody, but we were all stumbling around in the dark until we eventually made an acceptable enough noise that we thought, you know, we could actually go and play in public. And then we had no idea how to go about it. And I mean, unlike
were there
living
venues
in
around at
London
that time? Was there?
I'm sorry?
I mean, were there venues around at that time? Was there a kind of a scene that you could go and get gigs in, or you know?
Right. I mean, that's the point I was just coming to. I mean, it's unlike sort of growing up in London or Manchester or Glasgow or wherever. The Belfast at that time obviously had all the civil unrest, as well as, you know, any other problem you had in terms of getting out. And that meant that, I mean, the venues were very, very limited. They had a thing called the Ring of Steel around the city centre, which was basically a set of security gates that closed off the centre of town. I mean, the Clash very famously posed by them when they came over to play. And those things were locked around sort of 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. So the city centre became a ghost town. So any venues that were within that sort of Ring of Steel were they were screwed. You know, there was no way of getting in and out. I mean, you could get in and out, but it was, you know, you'd get a bus that would sort of go in and it would be checked and it'd go straight through the thing and out the other end. It was really difficult. I'm trying to work out how on earth you actually did get in the middle, because you could do it, but I can't for like me remember. So there were very few venues. Like I said, Ireland as well is very strange in so much as it's a huge country music country. I mean, it's almost like their main, or it was then, sort of their main form of entertainment. So, you know, there were a lot of what they call show bands. And the show bands would play the top 20 and intersperse it with a bunch of, like, you know, old Hank Williams or Buck Owens songs or whatever. And it was all based around cover versions. That was the sort of the actual overriding scene of the day was cover versions. So trying to play original material was a nightmare. There were possibly 2 or 3 venues that would put rock bands on. The main independent one was the Pound Club. Otherwise, you were looking at the university or the Polytechnic to get a gig. And the Pound Club was monopolized by a guy called Jim Armstrong. Jim was probably still is, I'm not sure if he's still with us, I hope he is, was a phenomenal guitar player. He played with them back in the day.
Oh, right, yeah.
And you know, he'd done the whole thing. He'd lived in America, which was wildly exotic at the time, and we couldn't imagine anybody living and working over here. But you know, he would play. He had like 3 bands, I think, at the time. You know, they would be the only 3 bands that played the Pound Club. It was like, you know, tonight Jim Armstrong's jazz funk band, tonight Jim Armstrong's country band, you know, that sort of thing. But he was a great guitar player, and but it was, you know, it was difficult to break into that, and particularly playing punk rock music, which we were starting to do, because, you know, that was also the time, you know, that Leiden was all over the front pages for being razored by teddy boy gangs and stuff. So it was the last thing that Belfast pub owners wanted was more trouble. You know, that was really not on the agenda at all, you know. So the bands, and there were a couple of others which we weren't actually aware of until the Clash first came across and tried to play, and their first show was denied because they couldn't get insurance for it, but it was denied at the last minute. So I think the band had actually even sound checked, and then they went, no, you can't do the show. Oh, so wow. that was at the Ulster Hall. So there were a few hundred people gathered outside when the news was broken to them that, you know, that the band aren't going to be allowed to play. So there was a bit of a minor disturbance. It's probably a bit of a stretch to call it a riot, but it was, there was a bit of
I can imagine it was probably more dangerous than letting the gig go ahead. To actually stop it was probably worse.
The clever thing to do, because again, it was probably only about, at most, I would guess, 400 or 500 people. And the Ulster Hall holds 3 times that. So, we'd have all been milling around or bundled up at the front of the stage. Social distancing would not have been a problem. I don't think,
Ahead of their time, the Clash, weren't they? They were ahead of their time.
Yeah, exactly. But that was when we met like-minded people, and we realised there were other bands there. And they'd already started. Rudy, in particular, I think there were 3 major main bands in Belfast. There were ourselves, Rudy, and the Outcasts. And Rudy, in particular, had sort of forged ahead in terms of they'd seen the problem that there were only these few venues you could play. Like I said, the Pound Club was monopolised by Jim. The University and the Polytechnic only wanted you. They might bring you in to open for somebody. But, again, at that point, people were nervous about coming to play there. So those opportunities would be in far between. So Rudy came up with this idea of hiring an old stable block in a local hotel, which was used for like wedding functions and birthday parties and stuff. And the only way you could get round, but you weren't allowed to charge money to get into this thing because it was supposed to be hired for a party. So what you would do is you would hire it for your mate's like 18th birthday party, fictional mate that didn't exist, 18th birthday party, and then you would stand in the car park and sell tickets for your show. And that's how they got round it. And we're like, that's a brilliant. So we totally nicked the idea, jumped on that, and started playing. There was a place called the Glenmackin House Hotel. I'm not even sure if I'm not sure if it's still there these days. And that was where bands started to play. And the first place we ever played was a bar on the Newton Ards Road called Lamb's Lounge, Paddy Lamb's Bar. And I'm not even sure how we got the gig. But yeah, we went on and we were playing again I'm darting about all over the place here. I'm sorry. But in the tradition of you've got to play cover versions, we thought we'll play cover versions. But where they were expecting "Send Me the Pillow That You Dream On," they got "Neat, Neat, Neat." So
yeah.
not quite what they were expecting. So it was difficult. You kind of had to. It was very much do it yourself, right down to not just recording your demos and pressing them up and putting them out on a record. It was do it yourself in terms of finding and promoting your own gig as well.
So what was the first time you sort of got out of Belfast and sort of was London? Sorry, man. Back to you.
That's okay. I had the BBC Two girl there for a second.
Yeah, I've just put that as my hold screen so people freaks people out. So I'm just going to plug this in here because it's a little bit funny. When was the sort of first time that you sort of got out of? Was London the first place you headed for, or where did you go?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we'd pressed up the first single. Our manager paid for Suspect Device to be pressed up, and John Peel started playing it. So we started to pick up a bit of interest from the mainland, and we were offered a record deal by Island, which fell through at the last minute. And so we were it was a bit like this. It was a bit like the pandemic. We were sort of sitting around going, what do we do now? We all quit our jobs to go sign this record deal, and that didn't pan out. And then totally out of the blue, we got an offer to do the Tom Robinson tour. At the time, Tom was coming, his first album was coming out, and they were coming off the back of a couple of hit records. So they were really hot property. And the only reason we got the tour was originally the reggae band Third World were supposed to open. By the way, Tom, if you're watching, much better band than we were. You should have stuck with them anyway. But they had a hit at the time. I think Now That We Found Love was a hit. So they wanted to do their own tour. They didn't want to go out as a support act. And that happened at the last minute. So Tom had heard us on the Peel show and had seen the little bit of buzz generated in the papers. And he got in touch and asked if we would do it, which was just a huge break for us out of nowhere. And he didn't ask for tour support. He actually paid us like 50 quid a night, which, in those days more than covered our petrol and even sort of, bed and breakfast around the country and stuff. And so, that was the main reason we came across. And also at that time, our manager had moved to London ahead of us. He was a writer on the Daily Express. So he had been moved across, and he had just happened to be in rough trade one day buying records, and mentioned that he looked after us as well, and so he was talking to Jeff Travis. But again, well, all this happenstance, it was just incredible, really. At the time, you think your career is moving as slow as molasses, but looking back on it, it was lightning fast.
Yeah.
And it was again sort of complete dumb luck that it was Jeff he was talking to. And Jeff said, "What are the band up to now?" And he said, "Well, they got let down on this record deal. They're coming over to do the Tom Robinson tour. It'd be really handy if we could get a record out." And Jeff said, "Well, we'll put a single out for you." But we don't have the time, much less the money, to record anything. And so we managed to somehow get hold of the demo tapes that we did for from Ireland, remix those, and that's where Alternative Ulster came from. That was
brilliant.
Demo tapes. And Rough Trade put that out to coincide with Tom's tour. So we came across, and the first show we did was at the Electric Ballroom in Camden.
Yeah.
And that was the first show off the boat. And at the time, I remember as well, we came across, and because we were just getting little mentions in the papers, we were all being lumped in together. There was like a second wave of bands at the time. So, the Pistols, the Clash, the Downs, all those guys, and your brother as well, had all been like the first wave, and they'd gone through.
Yeah.
So the rest of us, Johnny come latelys, were grabbing on everybody's coattails. We're sort of picking up. So we were always being compared with the Skids and the Members. Those were the two bands that we were always being compared with. We weren't long in London. There was like five of us eventually. Our driver came across and joined us in this one room in a little Fleabag motel on Westbourne Grove. So we were like sort of stuck with, what do we do with our time? We had no money. And we saw the Skids were playing in Nashville. So we're like, oh, we should go check out the competition, And but we were kind of full of ourselves. We were kind of, quite big-headed. We'd come from Northern Ireland where we kind of knew we played better than the other bands that we were being compared with. And we went to see the Skids. It's a memory that will stay with me to my dying day. We went to see them, and I think 2 songs in, I turned to Ali and went, "We may as well go home. These are a million times better than we'll ever be." I gave up. So just watching Adamson play was like, I'll never be able to play like that. Who am I kidding? It's like, so it was and then when we did the Electric Ballroom, and we got these great reviews, and it was like, okay, all right, and that was it. We were off and running.
Doing something right.
The Tom tour, and convinced we'd get a record deal off the back of the Tom tour, because again, we got great reviews all through it, and at the end of the day, no interest at all, not a bite.
God.
And again, Rough Trade, God bless them, came to the rescue and said, how do you feel about making an album with us? And again, it turned out, sheer dumb luck, turned out to be the best thing we could possibly have done. They basically said, we've never made an album, you've never made an album. How about when we recoup the costs of making it, we split the profit 50-50. So we were on a 50% royalty for the first record, which of course became a hit, and it only cost $2,000 to make, I seem to recall, something like that.
Wow.
And by the end of the first year, it had sold a ridiculous number of records. So then we really were off and running. And then, of course, the record was a hit. So all the record labels that weren't interested suddenly were interested. So,
You've been traveling around and like touring the world at that point, or?
No, and in fact, actually, that was one of the main reasons that eventually we left Rough Trade, was because, excuse me, they had a distribution network that only was the UK. I think they had a deal in place with Celluloid in France, so a couple of the records got out in France. But with regards to anywhere else on the planet, if anybody wanted to hear us, they had to pay import prices, which are ridiculously expensive. And this again, the thing happened so quickly that we were getting offers to go play in France, and which I remember when that offer came in, and I just burst out laughing. I was like, in those days, my accent was slightly stronger than it is now. I'm thinking, they barely understand me in Liverpool. How the hell are they going to understand me in Lyon? And the other thing was, the songs were actually written about something. It wasn't like we were standing there singing, I love her, she loves me, and I'm choked. to try and get across what the band was actually about to an audience that didn't speak English as a first language instantly struck me as a huge problem. But equally, there was a demand for us to go and play these places. And, you know, we were all in our, you know, late teens, early 20s. We wanted to go see these places and play these places, you know.
Of course, yeah.
And so, yeah, whenever offers from record labels started coming in, that was the main, from my point of view, was the main reason I wanted to move and do it, you know.
Well, I wanted to actually fast forward a bit because I wanted to speak about My Dark Places from the No Going Back album, which is a fantastic album.
Thank you.
But that song particularly resonated with me. I've had my issues with mental health, and that song has resonated. I know when you did the Artists for NHS at the start of this lockdown, you know, you kind of did a Q&A for us. And you did an acoustic version of that song, which just worked so well. I mean, you brought it down in key, but acoustic, and it was kind of slowed down, and it just worked. And I'd like to just ask you a little bit about that song. Is that? I mean, have you found that song one that you've had to explain a lot about, and has come up a lot? Because it seems to me that it really resonates with me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, it was a song that I wrote basically as a self-help guide almost. I was putting down on paper. First of all, I think I've found rather that since we've been playing the song, a lot of people have come to me and talked about it, and it seems to be that for the majority of people, when you get to around 50, certainly for men, when you get around 50, early 50s or whatever, I don't know if you start doubting what you've done with your life or what you're. I don't know where it comes from, but a lot of people at that period in their life it seems to hit them. For me, I think the trigger was going through a divorce, and the guilt that brought with it was what was really weighing on my mind. Obviously, there were other issues in there as well, but I found I was getting into a very dark place at that a lot of the time. And I'd moved here, and Americans are big on therapy. So you ought to go see somebody about that. I'm like, you know, and again, you couldn't get two more polar opposites in terms of attitudes to therapy than American and Northern Irish. You know, it's like oh, well, you know, I mean, everybody's cat over here seems to have a therapist. You know, so it's a bit like it's as normal to them as going to the pub is to us. You know, and it's like. And that's what it was. It was like, oh, you ought to see a therapist. And fuck off. You know, so like, no, that's not happening. But eventually, it was more actually to shut the wife up. I went. And I only went for a couple of months and then quit because the guy was annoying me. And she was like, you've made so much progress. And I couldn't see it. I just could not see it. You know, I didn't think I'd made any progress at all. But I guess the fact that I was actually talking about it without realizing was what was helping me.
Yeah.
And so I started to write down how I felt about it and what it felt like to me. And I never actually meant for the band to record the song, strangely. It was one of those, I didn't think it was that good a song. I just written it down. And I recorded a rough demo of it, which I sent to everybody, mainly because at that stage it was like, okay, it's 10 years since you put an album out. You really ought to get your finger out and put a record out. And we hadn't long taken on new management, so there was gentle pressure coming from that side as well. And it really was a case of, well, I've got this song, but I don't think it's really good enough, you know. And I think the reason I didn't think it was good enough was musical snobbery on my part, because it's only got like 3 or 4 chords in it, so it felt a bit like I'm writing a punk rocky song, you know. And even when I wrote it, like I said, I mean, the music was secondary. It was just the words that I wanted to put down. But the rest of the band really liked it. Ali, in particular, was moved enough to. At the time, he was living in New York, and he was during our downtime. He used to tour manage other bands, and so it wasn't unusual that he would come through Chicago, and I'd get a phone call saying, "I got a day off. Let's go have something to eat and a couple of beers or whatever." And so I got a phone call saying, I'm going to be in Chicago on Wednesday or whatever. Oh, great, cool. You know, so, well, do you want to go get something to eat? Or I said, no, let's just meet and have a drink. And, okay. So I met him, and we were talking, and it was just about an hour in. I said, "Oh, who are you here with?" And he said, "Actually, nobody. I came to see you." And I thought, "Oh God, he's going to quit." You know, he's come this way to tell me, "No, yeah, I've decided I can't stand you all anymore. I'm leaving." And basically, he flew that way to talk me into recording the song.
Wow.
And I said, "You know, you could have done this by email or phone call." You know, he said, "No, I think it's a good enough song, and I think you're an idiot for throwing it away." So that's why we recorded it. But yeah, I mean, the number of people, quite seriously, the reaction we've had to that song has been greater than, on a personal level, has been greater than probably anything I've ever written. You know.
Well, I think it's a song that kind of I mean, it showed when you recorded the acoustic version. It works in that format. It works in it, you know, and it almost can transform into all kinds of sort of genres of music. It feels like you can just cross those boundaries, and the message still resonates. It's still there.
Right.
So yeah, I just wanted to you know, to sort of confess my love for that song and thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
Right, I wanted to. We got to sort of finish up soon, but I wanted to get a recommendation from you for another just who would you recommend people go and check out? For someone they may not have heard, or you know, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is always one of those questions. You know, it's along with who are you listening to at the moment. You think your mind goes a blank instantly. And you kind of, I saw your message about this sort of just when I woke up this morning. And instantly my mind went, I did what it always does, it went blank. Went, oh, I don't know.
Snip little fingers.
That new Live Rory Gallagher record's really good, but people have heard of him, you know. I really like the new Bob Dylan. Damn, people have definitely heard of him, you know. So yeah, so I basically ran through the last bunch of records that I bought. I'm dreadful these days. I for the longest time I've been going and buying old, like ancient blues records and stuff like that. I mean, in the days of the iPod, I was never allowed to commandeer the iPod on the tour bus. It was like, one quote I remember from the middle of the night sometime was I was wobbling towards the docking station. It was like, oh, don't let him put his iPod's just full of dead black blokes. Don't let him put anything on. So, yeah, so a band that, I tend to buy, I find a band and I'll go and I'll buy all their records and then sort of realize that was a mistake. I probably just bought a best of or something. But one band that and again, you're probably going to go, oh, them, oh, everybody's heard of them, is a band called Shovels and Rope.
No.
No? Oh, good.
No.
You've not heard of. Yeah, they're kind of an American. Well, to say they're an Americana band is to do them a disservice because they do go about over the map. It's a duo, a man and a woman. Don't ask me their names. One, I guess in not shovel or rope, but you know, I'm guessing not. But yeah, I mean, I bought 3 of their records, and I tend to sort of slide back to them a lot. Again, I'm a sucker for. I've always been a sucker for pop songs, and I'm again probably the growing up with country music as well. Melody will get me every time as well, which again is, you know, unusual considering most people when they think of Stiff Little Fingers probably don't think melody first of all, you know. But even though we wrote those sort of songs, and even on the first album, there are melodies in there. It's just I was trying to sing like a cross between Lee Brillo and Joe Strummer, which was probably not the smartest move in the world on my part in terms of trying to get a melody across. Yeah, so Shovels and Rope, probably the album Swimming Time is probably the one that I go to the most. So.
Okay, that's brilliant. So thanks for joining us, and good luck with everything you're doing. And hopefully we get you back on the stage soon, and we can hear you out there. All right, thanks Jake. Thanks for joining us. So take care.
Thank you.